Hello everyone, my name is Lawson, and today I will be showing you how to synchronize two different instances of Eloqua Marketing Cloud using Oracle Integration Cloud. We're going to log into our instances, go to Settings, Audience, and find a contact. For this example, we are going to be synchronizing the global unsubscribe feature. But please just note that you can synchronize data to any of the available fields you see here in your user interface and any number of instances. For simplicity, in this example, we are synchronizing the global unsubscribe feature with two instances. I am pointing out that both instances currently have this contact listed as being subscribed.
Now let's switch to Postman, which is an API testing tool allowing us to run URLs that are typically coded into the application behind the scenes. So in this case, I am simulating as if a customer has clicked the unsubscribe button in an email.
Now that we have a better understanding of the use case, let's take a more technical dive into how to build the integration. If you're not technical, please don't let this deter you from continuing on. The interface is very user-friendly, and I'll explain everything as we go. From the Integration Cloud dashboard homepage, on the side, we are going to click on Integrations, then within the Designer pane, Connections. Here, we see a view of this library of adapters that allow you to connect to various native Oracle and non-Oracle applications. Adapters are modules of encapsulated resources which allows for more rapid development. In our example, we will be using the REST adapter, but I have other videos that show out-of-the-box adapters in action. Give a few bits of information, such as the base URL to the Eloqua instance and the login credentials. Let's test it, save it, and then move on to creating the integration. We will use these to make calls to Eloqua that will give and receive data. So I went through and configured the REST adapter for our second Eloqua instance, and now we will navigate to create the integration by clicking on the integrations link in the designer pane. We now see an integration style selector. In this window, we will select app-driven orchestration, but you can also have a time-based integration flow called a schedule orchestration for batch and bulk processing, secure file transferring, among others. However, app-driven orchestration is the most common integration flow. After you name your new app-driven orchestration, to start off this integration, we are going to detail a trigger, which is just a bit of data that is sent to this URL endpoint to signal to it run this integration. We will call this section overall Sync User Preferences. We'll change the HTTP verb to put and check the boxes to allow us to define the schema on the request and the response. In our case, we'll be using JSON to propagate the user's email and subscription preference. Now that that's created, we are going to add in a connection to our first Eloqua instance. Fill out a few lines of information, model some query parameters, and model the data configuration from this REST call. This part is called Get Contact Details. The query parameters required here are depth and search, which are both strings. We'll define these in the mapping. And then, as previously done with the trigger, we'll define the schema for the response. And next, we are going to click on this icon to map data points from the source, our data that has triggered the integration, to our target, this REST call, which is going to give us some contact details based on the email address of the customer. We are going to map the query parameters. For depth, we will hardcode in the term complete so that we can get back as much data as possible so we can choose whatever fields we would like to map. For our example, from this data set, we will get the needed ID in order to update the preferences in the next call. Drag and drop email into the search query and hardcode in the base and relative URLs respectively, because unlike the email, those will not need to be dynamic for each call. Now let's create a second REST call, which will actually update the user preferences using the ID we got from the last call. Just to clarify, the first REST call was completed because the IDs are likely to be different across various instances, but they should have the same emails if they are the same contact. So let's fill out a few lines of information, call this section Update User Preferences, model the data going in and the data coming out. Then we are going to click on this icon once again to open up mapping the data points from our source to our target. Then just map a few more fields by dragging and dropping from the sources, our data that triggered the integration, and the data returned from the previous REST call to our target, this new REST call. Again, we will hardcode in the base and relative URLs respectively because those don't need to be dynamic for each call. For the relative URL in this case, however, we will need to concatenate the main string to the dynamic ID. So open the mapping components, which will reveal folders of pre-programmed drag and drop functions. For this, we're going to use concat to combine the string of values. In order to do that, just add them in the order that you want them combined. You can click back to the source to drag in any dynamic data from the previously completed upstream flows. To complete this integration, I'm just going to repeat the last series of steps using the connection to the other Eloqua instance. That is, the get contact details and update preferences. Here you can see the completed flow, which took me about 30 minutes to complete from start to finish. To finish off this integration, let's save, click on the hamburger menu, and select tracking from the drop-down. Integration Cloud needs this piece of information to allow us to easily track the integration. Enable tracking and include the payload, which we will take a look at later when we check out the monitoring. Now that we have come full circle, we again go to Settings and find a contact. Once again here, I am just pointing out in both instances that the contact is currently subscribed. Then come back to the Integration Cloud. Grab the URL endpoint that triggers this integration, as well as the data we would like to send to this endpoint. Now let's switch to Postman, which again is just an application for development that allows us to see the data that is being returned. So it's just simulating as if the customer clicks on the unsubscribe button in an email. And now if we go back to the user interface of Eloqua and click on each contact, this contact details page now has both instances synchronized where the user is globally unsubscribed. Now let's go back to the integration cloud, click on monitoring, tracking, and now we have a list of all the instances that have been run through our program. Here we see our integration completed moments ago with a duration of 4 seconds, which means it took this integration 4 seconds from start to finish to propagate all the data. We see the completed integration flow where everything is green because it was successful. If for any reason any of these adapters had incorrect data passed through it, this view would highlight red around which module caused the fault, and you'd be able to easily debug. And finally, I just want to point out this little hamburger on the side where you can go in and you have several options that allow you to gain some insight into the data that is being passed through at each level, either through the audit trail or through the activity stream. That completes this demo. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.